My brothers, my brothers, my brothers, my sisters, my sisters, my sisters. Welcome once again to Black Men Declare. This is the Godfather, Mike Side. We're here to make a difference and to share from a black male perspective. We have a very powerful conversation tonight as I'm joined in the virtual studio by my brother Cyber Key and also by the Peacemaker. We've got a show that's going to follow up on our new venture, new series of shows dealing with the bipolar reality of America. We started this series out dealing with the founding fathers and whether or not they themselves were indeed balanced and true to their calling. We concluded that from the very beginning of this nation, there's been the reality of bipolarization. From there, we had to identify and examine the difference between morality and religion, where we concluded that religion is a man-made phenomenon, which allows us to fall into certain forms of beliefs and habits that may be beneficial and edifying to ourselves, but detrimental to the development of mankind as a whole. Thereafter, we dealt with democracy, concluding that while we live in what's called a democracy, democracy for most black folks in America has anything but that. We know that we theoretically were protected by the republic, not the Republicans, but by the republic, where structures come together as political parties in this country, Democratic and Republican. But we know even from there, we could not find shelter. And so tonight, we want to deal with that which really drove the creation of our present here in the first place, capitalism. This is going to be an exciting discussion because we know we live in an age and time where there are so many that think, feel, and believe that just because we're no longer dealing with the full frontal attack of slavery, that everything should be A-OK. But I want to share with you tonight, everything is not A-OK because we're dealing with a almost 250-year deficit. And when you look at the whole concept of capitalism, it's very difficult for people as a collective to ever catch up with the majority group. And so we want to dive into that tonight and what it means and what it has mean in the past of not having access to capital, not being able to leverage that which has been leveraged by others based on the fact that we were never given the same type of opportunity to invest, to borrow, to obtain, to attract, and even to be given. Yes, to be forgiven. One of the very, I would say, demonic activities of coming out of slavery was the fact that there were slave owners who were provided reparations for giving up their slaves and allowing their slaves to go free. So yes, we'll even have a moment to touch upon, can we quantify what would a reparation package be if we were able to come to agreement and say we must pay the descendants of American slaves, we must pay their descendants reparations for what was lost to them over these past 250 years that were lost, and over these more than 400 years plus that we've been here in these United States of America. So welcome, my brother Cyber Key, as we venture upon this conversation tonight. What is it on your heart? What is it that's in your spirit that you like to just start off with as an opening comments on this concept of capitalism in this bipolar America?
Peace to my brothers, my colleagues in this bright fight for truth, freedom, justice, and equality. For me, as it relates to capitalism and it being on my heart, is that the way that Black folks enter America and having a almost 400 or 400 plus years negative start or Caucasians having a 400-year head start on the way the system is set up, there's always going to be a large group of Black folks who are trying to find their way out of the poverty system because of that negative start. And how capitalism worked, with capitalism being focused on making profit, you all in a capitalistic society, the majority that are in control of the capital always are looking for ways to keep that low group, that impoverished group at the bottom, because they're going to they have schemes, skits, and strategies to try to capitalize off of that poverty. So there's never in capitalism there's never a way for the impoverished as a whole to ever come up to a level that they can have a fair chance at competing. Yes, you will have some that escape that circle, escape that group, but as a whole, the way capitalism is set up is never meant to allow the whole of that circle of impoverished people to come out, because the system it thrives off having the lower class, that impoverished people at the bottom. That's how capitalism continues to thrive.
Powerful opening comments. I'd like to turn to the peacemaker. Peacemaker, as you think about capitalism, and I know your background as well is very dynamic and have a nice understanding. But as a Black man today, how do you look at this disadvantage that we had to as a collective? Because Cyber Key is correct. There are many that have become millionaires. We even have some billionaires. But at the end of the day, that collective has not made any real level of advancement when it comes to the collective network of Black folks in America. If you looked at your own surroundings, uh, how would you say, if you applied what Cyber was saying, that some have made it and some have not? Is that the reality you see as well?
Greetings to our sisters and our brothers of Black Men Declare. Yes, Godfather. I totally agree. I think when you look at what our forefathers, or what the forefathers initially, they wanted a socialism type of environment, and they ended up, after all these years, becoming more capitalism. When we look at socialism, we see that it is a gathering, or it is about the whole being equal, that everyone is treated the same, everyone receives the same, and everybody is looked out as the same. But because we live in a capitalistic society here in the United States, it seems like it is now just the 1 or 2% of the work of the United States that are gaining, and everyone else is falling behind. When you look at, I see in my own society, in my own neighborhood, where there are the haves and the have-nots, and that gap is increasingly widening each year. There are more people who don't have, and those who do have, saying you should be able to come and do what we have, or they come and say, just be happy with what you have. So I think when we talk about the bipolarism of the United States, I think the mindset was socialism, but we ended up with capitalism.
Well, brother, some might challenge you on that the use of the word socialism, but socialism is exactly that which was applied when you think about how slavery was ended, and again reparations were divvied up to those white owners. And not only that, when you look at many of the great programs that occurred in America, be it the GI Bill, where people came back and they were given the opportunity to buy their homes because of segregated areas. Black GIs were not able to purchase home at the same level as those that were purchased by others. And so because of that, their ability to grow their net worth was not the same. They did not have the ability to grow their net worth, because if you buy a home that's $10,000 or $20,000 and someone else has one that's 40 or 50,000 working at the same place, and you have a growth in the economy or the price of homes of 10 or 12%, of course, the home with the higher value is going to have the greater overall appreciated value. So yes, that is a challenge when we think about that. So socialism is still applied today in this capitalistic society, although Europeans will try to say it's all about capitalism. Now I'm gonna give you a short version why I think, feel, and believe that we'll never have a golden opportunity as the Europeans. Capitalism, it means that you multiply capital. And for 250 years, Black people were legally denied capital, land, wages, credit, and other opportunities economically after emancipation. And systematically, we were blocked from compounding it through our home, through finances, through labor markets. And these policy choices made it very difficult, both public and corporately, to create the necessarily compounding return that would have allowed us to have any chance of catching up. Again, individually, we know and understand that you can achieve whatever you like to achieve in America if indeed you have the individual ability to be focused and you have talent and you are committed to your craft. But on a macro level, which is what we're speaking of during this series, it is literally impossible to fight all of the structural and systemic bigotry and racism that exists in order for us to pull ahead. Now, one of the areas that we seem to be bursting at the seams at these days is in the area of technology. And cyber, I know even you delve in this area quite often in the concept of technology. And we know what's taking place even with Michael Dell, Bill Gates, Fred Smith, uh, Zuckerberg, so many others that made their mark. Mark Cuban, the former owner of the Lakers, I can't even remember his name at the moment. They made their opportunity. So many say, well, why don't you guys come up with some ideas and you could do the same? Do you have an ideal or a perspective or a vision on, is that the way we should focus our attention? Is maybe going after some technological breakthroughs to create more millionaires and billionaires for Black folks in America? And could that money be leveraged for us to achieve those things we need to get done as a community?
In a utopia, I think that strategy is will be okay, but we're not living in one. And we see that with fan base, for example. Fan base is a application, social media application similar to Instagram, similar to Twitter, and the likes. But because he doesn't have the access to capital, and he has many barriers of entry to that market, it's hard for him to get his platform off the ground. Even when it goes to such a thing as such things as evaluation. Who's doing the evaluation? Probably a bunch of older white men or white men in general that's going to do the evaluation. And we know how that goes. It's no different than your home and how they say that Black homes get a lower rating or a lower amount than white homes when they're going through and doing the inspections on your home. So it's the same. It's that same strategy. And again, when you don't have an opportunity to really create generational wealth, you have barriers of entry. You have ownership issues because you need capital. You go out to try to get capital. you have these long shot companies that's looking for black companies like ours to say, hey, we know you're struggling. We're going to give you this loan, and the loan, they charging 50, 60, 70% on that loan. And most of us really can't afford what we're getting. It may last for a while, but a lot of our businesses end up going into well, I guess they were not foreclosure, but going at, they end up taking over our business because we can't the loan, we can't pay back the loan. So, those type of things, it sounds good on paper. It really does. It say, oh, in America, you can get what you want to get, just work hard and, blah. But if you don't have the same barriers of entries or less barriers of entries that the folks that have been doing this for 400 years have, you're always going to find yourself at the mercy of those who have. Always.
Now, you just opened up something very powerful. As a matter of fact, the undervaluation of homes in Black communities or with Blacks probably generates the highest level of lost potential revenue and income that could be used for capital development that exists. What do we mean by that? Let's say you want to sell a home. You live in a nice neighborhood, and look what happens. All of the realtors come in. They tell you to take your Black art off the wall. They tell you to make your home look like it's vanilla. You don't want to have any kind of ethnicity that's showing. And so let's say the appraiser comes around. Your home should be valued for $400,000, $200,000. Doesn't matter what the number may be, but it's given an evaluation of say 5 to 10% less than that. Well, that 5 to 10% that you lose as a homeowner is 5 to 10% that you collectively put that together. That's a big number. As a matter of fact, I played around with some numbers earlier today and yesterday, and trust me, if we were able to extract the same amount of percent sale improvement that those same homes percent sale improvement made when we purchased them, we would have enough money that we could put together recreation centers, swimming pools. We could do a whole lot of things, not necessarily from the government. We could do them ourselves. But because we are not provided with the same level of value for our homes on a percentage basis, that's lost revenue, that's lost capital. And because of that lost capital, that's why we always seem to be a day late and a dollar short. Now, Peacemaker, what about the government? I mean, are they obligated these days to do something for us? There's some that say that the best blessing we have is not to have the government involved in our business. Again, can you think of if you could imagine when you're selling the home again, we got to look at this thing and think about it. That loss, Nelly Fuller, your buddy, again, I know I mentioned him to you last week. He said, though, and I think I'm beginning to see it, when you see them move, you move. Why? Because you have the greatest chance not to lose that value. The longer you stay there, once you get to that 50% level in a particular neighborhood, the whole value goes down. That shouldn't be the case. Would you agree with Mr. Fuller that you should move, or do you have any ideas perhaps on how capital could be leveraged in your home and stay in the neighborhood?
I even though I highly respect Mr. Fuller, Dr. Fuller, I would say what I've seen here in the nation's capital, where it would have been better for people, instead of moving, for them to stay and then transfer their properties over to their grandchildren, and then not just their grandchildren, but their great grandchildren. I've seen where neighborhoods have totally flipped, where there were it was an all black neighborhood, and now in those same neighborhoods where I grew up at, they have now become predominantly white or even Asian neighborhoods, and those are the $1 million homes. Now, had we stayed, instead of selling it for 500,000, if we would have stayed an extra 20 years or maybe 15 years, we could have sold it now. And I'm specifically talking about my family's home, which my grandparents bought in 1967 for $12,000. We sold it 15 years ago for 500,000. Now those same houses are worth $1 million. So though it is beneficial sometimes to move, I think we have to look at it on long term. And I think that's where we fall short, where sometimes we have those people that will come in and offer us the quick dollar, and then where are we to move? Where most people end up in apartments when they could have had a house, and they could have leveraged that house for future families and future incomes. So I think, though I totally agree it is beneficial, but I think that we have to look long term. And I think sometimes we just move a tad too fast.
That's a very powerful perspective, my brother. And that's a unique situation. But you do see gentrification taking place in a lot of areas, urban areas around America. Yet at the same time, you see a heavy layer of decay in America as well. But man, DC, and probably there are a few other areas in America that would be similar examples. But that's almost like in a stat data set, you would leave that out as an outlier. You wouldn't put that into the data set because you would say, "Oh man," but that's an exception, right? But I do believe that would be a great strategy for certain pockets in the United States of America, because every city, urban area seems to have that special place where there is indeed a continual improvement in the equity of blacks that live in those areas, and they should hold on. I would agree with you. If nothing else, leverage those and see if you can create some capital, extract some equity, and build some businesses from that, because that's what some of the Europeans have been able to do to a great degree.
And
Now,
Godfather, before you go on, I just want to say
go ahead.
not only just for housing, but I think what I've seen also happened in business areas where we had the riots in '68 due to the unfortunate murder of Dr. King, where they burnt DC. They burnt the businesses, and a lot of businesses suffered. And now here they are, some 50 years later, those businesses are gone. But now you have white established businesses coming in there and moving. And now you have this influx of capital that's in these corridors where for a long time they was burnt up old buildings. So I think it's just, we have to look at it not just for housing, but and also for our businesses. When you have an opportunity to buy a business and put it in a area which might not be the best, try to hold on to it and try to get as much funding as possible. There is a business right now in I want to say Fulton, Georgia. He opened up a restaurant, and he is now going to social media saying, I want to keep my business open, but I need assistance. The business is doing well, but we bought additional land for parking. And because of that, it's draining the business. So he went to social media to ask for funding. And I think it's necessary for us to look at those type of opportunities, to invest in those type of opportunities, so that we become that 1 or 2% and not be the other that's on the outside looking in.
I have
So,
just a
go ahead,
thought
Simon.
as it relates to this part of the conversation, because um, you know, I agree with my brother Peacemaker about leaving it to your children and your grandchildren, and I think the only issue is that even leaving it to them doesn't guarantee the influx of capital. And I think that's where the challenge is, because in my neighborhood where I grew up, the house is on to the grandkids now. The house is there, but unless someone in the family has escaped that poverty, fortunately that my family is one of those families, you know. But a lot of families around us, you know, their kids or grandkids have it, but it's still in a dilapidated state because they don't have access to the funds. Whereas we have remodeled the house, we have, you know, rebuilt it from a fire. We have done a lot of things to that house, and you see houses around us that hasn't been able to keep up because of that lack of funding. So you still have to have that family member who has escaped the poverty. You know, now those grandkids that wasn't able to do it, they're losing those houses of Caucasians. So now in my once all black neighborhood, you have Caucasians and others, Mexicans and others, that are now homeowners in that same neighborhood. And it's no fault of theirs. They're just taking advantage of the system, which was built on, you know. So you can't fault them, you know. But we have to my thing is finding a way to get that capital in. But again, if you decision makers in the city are not black, or even if they are black, because there's some black decision makers in the city that have no heart as it relates to black people and making sure money gets pushed out to the community. So it's on us as well as them. So I just wanted to add that piece to the conversation.
Oh, that's a great distinction. I would say this too, Peacemaker, on the distinction between that business owner in Fulton County, Georgia, is that, see, structurally, not knowing the details, what that person maybe should have considered would have been to purchase the parking lot as a different business, not incorporate it into his main business, but to have bought it as a separate entity. And then, as a separate entity, if he could not hold on to it, it would not then impact his primary business operation. See, sometimes we have to also use our, you know, use others. We have to pursue others that maybe before you make a deal like that, you go somewhere and say, hey, how can I purchase this area, this land for parking, but I want to keep it separate from my real money maker? And maybe somebody could have said, well, hey, here's how you do that. So we also have to seek, seek some wisdom, knowledge, and understanding prior to doing some of these things. Now we're talking about, really, brothers, I know you know this, the number one net worth asset we have is our homes. That's the number one for black people in America, right? And it stands to reason that we are not too diversified as a group. You know, and that's understandable as well, because many of our people, we bought houses or land and we've stayed there and we've continued to improve, like Cyber Aki is sharing about in his area. I too, being from Detroit, have witnessed the same phenomenon, in that if you leave those areas and go back, if you have the money to actually invest, you can create additional capital. And from that additional capital, you could rehab those areas to the point, just like we see these young white folks coming in their effort to deploy gentrification. Another brother was telling me the other day, if I went back to where I grew up in Detroit, I would be highly surprised at seeing young white folks walking down those streets. And so given that reality, Cyber, what is it when you think about this whole concept again of capitalism and that which we were not afforded? That takes us over to this concept of reparations. What is it that makes it so difficult for whites living today to understand that if you looked at a typical income statement, that's a financial record snapshot of a business, and the highest line item in an income statement in most businesses is compensation and benefits. And it can range anywhere from a low of 10 to 15 to as much as 50%, depending on the industry. But what is it about this? I know, again, we speculated last week, but we have to speculate to have a conversation to get an understanding. Why is it so difficult for people to understand that reparations is simply paying back what is already owed? It's not like you going and you're getting something that we don't earn and deserve. We have every right as descendants of American slaves to expect to be paid for compensation denied. So you combine that with this home ownership or lack thereof, or the inability to be paid appropriately, it adds up to a whole lot of money. And if we were able to receive those reparations, what changes would you recommend in the Black community?
That is a loaded question. And the first thing is, I think a lot of Europeans or non-Black people who are against reparations, it's because it hasn't been done to them. And it's like any of us. If something hasn't been done to you or your family, sometimes it's kind of hard to find empathy for the people who are on the other side of the table that the action is being done. Sometimes we'll say, oh, that's bad, blah, blah, blah. But when it comes to money and it possibly changing that person's life, we get quiet because the first thing we say is, dang, they're going to be doing better than me if they get that money. And I truly believe the average white person, that's what's in their head. They're going to be doing better than me. Or, well, I don't really understand it. I don't think they deserve it because, that's a generation, three, four generation for some, two for some. I don't think they really deserve it, but it's only because it hasn't happened to them. And so they set their mind on those two things. And it's hard to maneuver or get them to see beyond those two things. And I think for Black folks, if reparation was to become a thing that we were to get it, you have to have the education, and the education about money and about resources. And I'm happy though that conversation has started with people like John Hope Bryan, like EYL, like Wall Street Trapper, like Chris Sand, like Aristotle Investment, Ian Dunlap. I mean, I could go on and on naming these young brothers, Charlemagne the God, that's talking about financial literacy, and because we are now talking about it within the, and we got to understand, this is only in a short period of time. This financial boom in the Black community has only been since COVID, because we had a few months of downtime. People started really getting on social media, start voicing their thing, and it took off. It took off. That's one of those things that I believe the Creator designed for COVID, for situations just as that. because if it didn't happen, some of these folks would not be online talking about financial freedom, ways to invest. How do you invest in the stock market? Because they would have been off doing some other thing. But because they had that downtime, all of a sudden the idea came. And not only did it help us, but as it relates to others seeing it coming and can't stop it, they didn't see it coming. So they couldn't stop it. They couldn't stop that wave that started happening during COVID because they had no idea that it was coming in the Black community. Now it's everywhere. They just had an Invest Fest here in Atlanta, 25,000 people, 25,000 people. Magic Johnson was one of the speakers and some other people, whatever. But it's just like we have to have that knowledge and information, because without that, you put that money in somebody's hands without knowledge and information, that money will be gone tomorrow. But because that wave has happened, I think we are more prepared than we ever been to receive that reparation.
You know, I agree with you there, Cyber, because here's the deal. If you think about COVID and what's happened after that, a lot of Black folks lost net worth amazingly during COVID and right thereafter, and have been forced to look other ways than the traditional employment cycle. And because of that, I agree 100%. They're beginning to look at entrepreneurship more than ever before. I grew up seeing Black businesses in Mississippi. I grew up seeing them. So I always knew, felt, thought, believed that Black folks should be in business. Now, exactly where I grew up, you don't see the Black businesses. Your young children don't see it. So when I grew up, it was nothing new. It was not a big deal to see somebody in Black business. But with integration, and we know all about that, and we're going to talk about that later on down the road, we lost that image of that Black person in business. And when you speak about reparations, my brothers, it's a big, big number, depending on who you talk to. And we got to understand, it's not only what was stolen from us here in America, what was stolen from the motherland. I'm going to read this number to you because it's mind-blowing. It says the potential reparations envelope for Africa could be anywhere from 15 to 30 trillion dollars. In the U.S., closing the racial wealth gap requires an additional 10 to 20 trillion. The global ledger could amount to 25 to 40 trillion. Nobody knows the real answer, but the bottom line is it's big. And with those kinds of numbers, even if it was half, look what you could do. You could put in all the recreational centers that you need to put in America, all the swimming pools, the baseball diamonds, the whatever recreational activity, the STEM programs. You could improve the quality of drinking water at the tap for people. I mean, you could do so much. So not only are we losing value when we sell our homes and move from one area to another, look at the lost wages and compensation over time, not only here. I believe a move is spiritually underway. And I believe that what we're seeing on a global basis right now, and what we're seeing with the fall of Babylon here in America, that the Creator is doing something. And there's going to be a change. It talks about, the transfer of wealth and all of that. And so many people scratch their heads and say they can't believe. Well, it's going to happen. Now, whether it happens in my lifetime, I'm older than you two brothers, or not, I believe we're going to see a significant transfer of wealth, just like we saw beginning in 1492 when that first lie was told, and we saw a tremendous transfer of wealth. It's happened once, it's going to happen again. But speaking philosophically for a moment, Peacemaker, share with me, if you were going to paint a picture of the future, if you were going to say, how would you, paint capitalism where we again, as Black folks, what changes would you make? Because we need to make some changes, I believe, at least, because some of the money that we're getting, some of these billionaires and millionaires the way they are deriving their richness. I'll be quite honest with you. We spoke about morality, last time. It doesn't hit my spirit correctly that we're making money in ways that yet still objectify our women and feminize our men. What changes do we have to make in how we handle our money, even for those that have made it?
Yeah, I definitely believe that we have to look at the totality of what used to work. And what used to work is family. I think that we need to get back to a place where we had black towns, where we had black businesses be established, that we don't depend upon outsiders, but we look at what's within and see what we can do to make sure that we survive. And not only that we survive, but we thrive. Um, it was interesting when I was listening to your question earlier, and I was saying what's holding back Caucasians or others from reparations, and I thought about it, and I attributed it to accountability. They don't want to be accountable for the injustices that they have created, and because of that, it will also make them look bad, feel bad, and then they're saying, okay, how can we even come up with such a large number? How could we even close up that gap? It just really seems impossible. But if I had to look towards a future, I would look towards a future where we had, similar to what Marcus Garvey spoke about, having our own societies, having our own cities. It's very funny, or it's very interesting that you now have these towns that are popping up in Iowa and Utah and Wyoming, that they're saying they're creating these all white towns. And I thought about that and I said, okay, if they're creating a town, why can't we create a town? Why can't we create our own states? Why can't we create our own hubs? And very similar to what we see in most urban cities. We see Chinatown, we see Little Italy. We need to come up with our own area where we look like each other, we support each other, and we look out for each other and bring about unity. But in totality, I would love for us to take a good portion of the country and create it where it just be all about people of color.
Well, Cyber, you also, I believe, growing up in the South, had a chance to see, perhaps not as much, I don't know, to be quite honest, when you grew up, but in the neighborhood you mentioned and the people that are still there, perhaps you saw black businesses, and I don't know. But have your experience as you travel these United States of America? I know you've had a chance to travel to many areas. Are you seeing in your travels any kind of increase in black businesses or the discussion about developing black businesses? I know you mentioned the conference that was here in the ATL, but what are you seeing? What are the brothers saying? You are the younger of the group. Is there new enthusiasm in the concept about capitalism? What's happening? Give us a quick education.
Well, first of all, yes, in my neighborhood, I grew up knowing the stores were initially owned by all black folks. There's still one black convenience store in my neighborhood. Out of three of them, there's one. There used to be all three when I was growing up until around about 9 or 10, when Zeke and his brothers moved in. They were from Iran, and it was three brothers. They lived in the store. Started with one brother. He brought another brother in. They ran the store, lived in the store. Then the second brother went and got him a store. Then they brought the other brother over, and they repeated that cycle until each brother had their own store. And So I witnessed that process. That's how I learned how to do business with family. Actually, to be truthful, looking at the Iranians, because I was very close to them from my uncle and my grandmother. And Mr. Irvin, unfortunately, he died. He left the business to his son. His son had other ideas of what he wanted to do. Now that store is dilapidated. Me and my uncle are actually trying to get ownership of it now, but family's trying to hold on, but not doing anything with it. Shepherd Brothers is still around. He's making improvements. They just built an arena right across the street from Shepherd Brothers, so now he's getting more traffic, and the traffic is mixed crowd now. It's not just black folks. So hopefully he's able to sustain. But some of the other black businesses around, they sold their businesses when they built the arena because they gave them an offer they couldn't refuse for the land. So I did get to see that. But as it relates to younger folks, they're very enthused about entrepreneurship. I won't necessarily say capitalism because I really don't think they really grasp what capitalism is. It may sound good when they're making that money, when the business is actually doing good. It may sound very good, but when those businesses start to struggle, they witnessing some of the downturn or something like that, and they go through that struggle. What would they say about capitalism then? Everybody who does capitalism when things are going good, say, oh, it's the best thing since sliced bread. But the minute that you run into those barriers of entries, and you start to see the system play out like it was designed to do, then you get a different answer when you're across the table from that individual who's going through that process. So I think for the most part, they're very enthused about entrepreneurship with investing in the stock market. I hear more about investing in stock market and entrepreneurship within the past few years than I have heard over my 49 and a half year life, just in the past 5 years. So there is a growth in the black community. There's a movement happening. There's a movement happening in the black community. And I wish it's sustainable. But until, like my brother just said, we have an area of our own that we're too dependent upon the American infrastructure. I said that in the previous episode. We are too dependent on the American infrastructure. And it's okay to be, that so-called melting pot, but we need something that like the Mexicans have. Mexicans come here, they love America, they represent America, but they love Mexico, even if they're not there. They funnel their money back. They're trying to build up their family members. We need something that even if they decide to say, hey, we give you Georgia and South Carolina, something that black people can start to develop over the next century or so to have that land. Or we have to do like Marcus Garvey and others said, we have to use Africa as that place and find a country in Africa to start helping to develop.
Brothers, that's a powerful segue because I'm going to tell you, Africa is the most mineral-rich continent on the planet. And yet we sometimes fail to realize that Africa and its independence is a real recent reality for many of the nations in Africa. I'm talking 40, 50, 60, 70 years in my lifetime, some in your lifetime. So, and they don't really understand capitalism. And so if you're trying to play ball or any sport and you don't know the rules of the game, you're going to be at a disadvantage. If you don't have the contacts, if you don't have the relationships, if you don't have the ability to know how to leverage what that you could use as collateral, and if you don't know how to do that, you're at a disadvantage. And unfortunately, when it comes to this particular subject matter, then we are at a disadvantage, normally because we don't have that kind of leverage. We don't have that kind of capability. And even us as individuals, when we may amass a certain amount of success. You cannot, as you mentioned about fan base, it's still difficult to get to that level you need to get to. I can share or could share with you stories about people I know that had ideals that were so fascinating. We've mentioned some of them tonight. If it was even on water, on how to improve the quality of drinking water in America, but again, could not get the capital necessary, nor could get government officials to sign just a simple non-disclosure agreement that most businesses require other businesses to sign. And they do it because it's what's done, but would not do it with black folks because they didn't want to say, I'm going to hold your intellectual capital as being valuable. So they wouldn't do it. I mean, I could tell you stories about brothers who had the rights to international capital as relates to gold mining, and they had all of the answers to extracting additional gold from talents that had already been mined. And you know what the price of gold is today. Yet when one person may have been changed in an organization, a new person came in that was European, and they would not release the rest of the money. On and on and on about brothers that I knew that had the visions, and I'm sure you know some too, that would be able to then extract that and go and do those things we continue to say need to be done in the black community. But people would have those barriers, as you mentioned, Cypher, and they would not allow you to get over that hurdle. And those situations still exist today. And sometimes we go back and have some of those conversations and say, do you remember when gold was 275? Brothers, when we leave, go and check out what the price of gold is today. Those would be millions of dollars that could have billions of dollars that could have been generated and could have accomplished some of those things. I was very comfortable living in an all-black neighborhood growing up. I never knew anything but that. And so that's what we've got to get back to. We've got to get back to feeling good about being with ourselves. We've been sold this bill of good, and we still didn't really deal with this entertainment piece and where we make our money. So in our closing comments, I like to hear both of your opinions on, how do we make, as we have a conversation with ourselves, how do we be appropriate in explaining to our young people, especially, that everybody can't be a rap star, everybody can't be a superstar in sports. How do we have that conversation? Because that's where so much of our mental energy is, our dreams are displayed, and then when it doesn't happen, we seem to be so disappointed. What kind of conversation should we be having in that regard, my brothers? Cyber, let's go with you first.
Yes, I can't remember who it was offhand. I'm trying to think. I was just listening to someone, and they said they went to a school. I think it was Charles Barkley, actually. They said they went to a school, and or he went to a school, and he asked the white kids, and what they wanted to be when they grew up, and they all from all saying doctors, lawyer, policeman, blah blah blah. And he said he asked the black kids, and I can't remember the exact number, but I think it was somewhere around 90% or something of them say they wanted to be in the entertainment industry. That I believe, because it's not really of the fault of it, the children or the parent. It's that in our community, the access to wealth and closeness to power has always come through the entertainment industry. Right, wrong, and indifferent. Our athletes, we celebrate them. We almost put them up to be gods in our home. Our movie stars, our comedians, we celebrate them at such a high level, and the money that they are able to obtain, and then most of them, right, wrong, and different, when they got that money, we seen them on the big screen with the white superstars. And so we just automatically assume, man, that has to be the only way, because that's all I'm seeing is like You know, you seeing Muhammad Ali with all of these white superstars and entertainers. You started seeing after Jackie Robinson went through his ordeal, you started seeing him with all of these white stars and entertainers. You see the Jim Browns, you know, you see the Bill Cosbys, you see the Cindy Portiers, you see all of these people. Just think about that 50, 60, 70 time frame when we was just coming out trying to get out of Jim Crow, just getting the right to vote. What did we see? All of our entertainers has access to power or being close to power and seemingly having a lot of money. Our singers, the James Browns, you know, just think about that. That's what was pushed in our community for several decades. Mm-hmm. Now, like I said, in a short period of time, you starting to see a change. So we just have to continue to speak on it, no matter how repetitive it becomes. We have to continue to speak on it, broadcast on the podcast, on the platforms, and say, you know, you can be a doctor and you can make this. You can be an entrepreneur. Yeah, it may be hard. Yeah, you may have access, you know, may not have the access to capital like some other one, but keep churning, keep investing in the stock market. You know, and when you invest in the stock market, that compounding begins to take effect. You know, to be truthful, man, I'm almost 50 years old, and over the past 10 years, I'm just understanding the value of compound of anything. It don't have to be just the stock market, but compounding as far as your talent is related and practicing your talent. If you got a talent and you keep on practicing day in and day out, that's compounding. Just think of how much you're going to be when you hit that 10,000 hour period. That compound is no joke. We never understood the value of that. Now it's seeping into some of our children's head, and I'm hoping in these next decades it pay off. But here's the thing: when they started to realize this is why they love Trump, because when they started to see it happening, what did they start saying? We got to change this. We got to get America back. He comes in, all of those things that was semi helping us gain those levels, he started repealing and taking away. So, but I'm hoping that what God put in place, and I know that God, when we always say the enemy plans and God plans, actually I say Satan plans and God plans, and surely God is the best planner. So I know that plan that he put forth during the COVID time is going to blast us off into a stratosphere that they can't pull back. We have made connection. I'm sorry to be long-winded on this last point, but I've saw so many brothers and sisters these past 5 years make contact with Africa. We got boots on the ground all over Africa. I'm seeing brothers that just went to China, making contacts with actually a sister went over there first, made it her residency, went around to all of the places in China to set up business, set up contact. So now when people go, you have a point of contact on the ground in China to take you around to all of these businesses that can do things and make it much cheaper, and for us to gain access to those places that's on Alibaba and some of those Chinese shops that can, you know, do something special for us. We get it imported, and now we got a business we can sell and distribute it and do all of those type of things. So these past 5 years, man, that's why I love technology.
That's why 47 put those tariffs on. You want to make those prices higher for the brothers and the sisters. Come on, Peacemaker. Beautiful response. Come on.
Yeah, I would definitely say that I think we have to I agree with my brother Saraki that so many people have made the pathway out of the ghetto or out of poverty to be either sports or entertainment. And we have to now go back and stress to our children that's not the only road. We need to actually start teaching them that the road to great wealth is back in our trades. I think we've lost the sensibility of creating and manufacturing things. And we need to get back into setting trades, and not making it where going to college, getting a 4-year degree or 8-year degree is the only way of getting money. We was taught that it's necessary for you to go to college, and what we found out recently is that's not the best. That might not be the best way. And a lot of our young people are deciding, you know what, I don't want to wait that long. I don't want to go that path. When you look at even in entertainment now, you see where people are not signing deals with major deals with these record companies. They're doing independent distribution deals where, and then they're going out and putting out their information and music directly to the consumer. So I think when we use the technology that we have, when you look at the methods, we have to look at and teach our young people the old ways. Not that we want to destroy them, but that's one way. But look at these other ways of getting wealth. Again, I am now pushing because I've seen it where trades are the way to go. Um, I see where we have lost just the art of creating and doing things with our hands. And if you look at a totality of a man's or woman's career, what they build with their hands usually lasts a lifetime, and sometimes even 2 or 3 lifetimes.
That's a powerful statement, my brother. And you know that Booker T. Washington in his famous debate with W.B. Du Bois, that was always the conflict. Should you learn how to do something with your hands, or should you learn how to be integrated? And I believe Booker T was correct. As a matter of fact, when he spoke at the Great Atlanta Exposition in 1905, he made that great statement that in all things for the good of the country, we should be like a clenched fist. In all things social, we should be like an open hand, meaning that let's keep it separate. It's been our pleasure to have you listen in tonight at this discussion with Cyber Aki and with the Peacemaker, the Godfather Mike Side. We'd like for you to become a subscriber. Hit the subscription button, hit the like button, hit the notification button so you know when we're on the next time. We'll be on every week, or maybe sometimes twice a week, 3 times, just depends on how the spirit leads. We want to speak next time about this military power, which is funded and funded by capitalism, that we may begin to know and understand that even this year, 47 wants to approve $1 trillion defense budget. We have been able to see those things that have taken place in Ukraine, the amount of money spent there in support of Israel in this war against Gaza, where we are by default fighting 2 different wars right now around this globe. We must become more knowledgeable of all of these subject matters. And we are Black Men Declare. It's our goal, it's our objective, it's our purpose to bring you these perspectives and others. We know that we can't always provide the full overlay and a full detailed report, but we can say that if you would take this information, go do additional research and come up with your own conclusions. We're not saying that we are correct in everything we say, but we are saying now is the time for all of us to dig deep, to expand the existing base of knowledge. This is the Godfather, Mike Side, saying go in peace and in love.